Hello, welcome to the Presbyterian Church of Wilmington. Our church began its faith journey in 1823. This makes it our 200th year. My name is Karen Standridge. I've been a member of this church for 7 years. My first visit here, sadly, was for a funeral. But I want to tell you that when I walked into church, I felt at home. I felt peaceful. I am currently serving as a deacon. I really enjoy being a deacon. I love helping people in the church. I've found that anytime I have a question or I need help, I can go to any church member and I can have that question answered. In this video, members of our church are going to give you a thoughtful turn back and discuss why we come to church, why we come to honor God every Sunday, why we come to honor the body of Christ. Whatever it is that brought us here, it will keep us here. And I hope you enjoy all the musings that the members are going to bring forth to explain the church.
Well, I've always felt strengthened by the church. And of course, particularly this one, because we've been here for so long. I like the people. I like the fellowship, I guess, is always, number one. There were so many people here that liked the fellowship and believed in the things that I also believed in. Mm-hmm. So it's always been a comfort feeling, and it gives you strength just to have a church, and it strengthens you, I believe, and I think it always has your back. It's kind of a soft place for me to fall, and that's the strength that it gives to me, and I've had that probably all through the time that I've been a member here.
This church was in a way providential in getting us to live at Cape May, where we live now. We were going on a camping trip to Cowan Lake with our trailer, past the Presbyterian Church on Route 22 coming up, and said, I think we can go, let's go there to church, because I know the interim minister. Sign had no hours of service. Now this was a Friday in April. We called the church and got an answering machine. And we knew they weren't going to return the call on Saturday.
Yeah.
So I called the Presbyterian office to find out what time is this service. The Presbyterian office also had a message. And it said the Presbyterian offices will be closed on Monday for the Christmas holiday. Now this was in May.
Yeah, right.
So we had we were not supposed to go to that church.
Yeah.
We camped in Lake Cowan, drove into Wilmington, saw the Wilmington Presbyterian Church. Thought, we called the Wilmington Presbyterian Church, and Sue Shaw was there on a Saturday. Answered the phone, told, welcome, come, and all. We came over here, and here was Tom Martin as the interim pastor, who I had helped with his retirement papers and all that when I worked for the Board of Pensions. And in the bulletin was an insert advertising Cape May Village.
Really?
Yeah. And I had worked for Ohio Presbyterian Homes. I was their first chaplain at Land Fair in Cincinnati. And Cape May was not a part of it then. That was way back in the 80s. And so we drove over there, drove around. Well, this looks pretty good. We called. We had an interview on Monday with the marketing person, but we're discouraged because they said you can't park an RV here anywhere. So, okay, well, we just wanted to know about it. So we were invited later to an open house, and they made an exception. And didn't make an exception. They were looking to get people to buy a villa, and they agreed, and the rest is history. We moved there, and then that led us back here to the church, and that's how I got involved in the church.
I have a hard time distinguishing between churches because I grew up in a Baptist church and everything was pretty strict and all, and when I moved to the Presbyterian church, when I got married, I married a girl from Franklin, and she was Presbyterian, so I became Presbyterian. My grandparents had been Presbyterian before me, so it's not. So anyway, it seems like the teaching in the Presbyterian church is just as honest and straightforward and everything, but I don't think they're leaning on you all the time like some of the Baptist ministers were anyway in the Baptist church. And I really thought I was kind of glad to become a Presbyterian when I married my wife. She was from Franklin, Ohio, in a tiny little Presbyterian church, and that's where we got married.
Of course, I hadn't started going to church over there.
No, because
South Richmond.
I kept asking you to go to church and you said no. And then just one day he gets up and he said, "Are you going to church?" And I said, Don't I always? Well, I'm going. And now he never misses.
The only thing I could think of is a strong belief that when I pray to God that He's listening.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the main thing. I really feel like it's not a matter of just somebody preaching it to you. I really, truly believe in it, and all through my life I've tried to carry that out. Even when I was in the service, I always made sure I got connected with the church. The chaplain would have a service and would go to it together and sit around and have a service. But anyway, it's just always been so much. I don't know how to express it, except that I don't want to give it up for anything, and it does influence me. Probably should. It doesn't show all the time because I say and do things.
What? You're not perfect.
I'm a human being.
We
I
all
always
are.
give myself credit for being a human being. So
I was brought up in the Methodist Church. When we married, for some reason, we decided we didn't want to be a part of organized religion. And every few years we would talk about it and visit a church, but we never stayed with the church.
I was the holdout.
And then 9/11, 2001 happened, and I said to Dave, I have to go to church. I have to go. And so we started shopping local churches, and the Sunday that we came into this church, David Hawley was in the pulpit. It was such a friendly, outgoing group of people that met us, and David Hawley's sermon, I can only say it was similar to if you've ever been in a college level history class with a professor who could really speak and hold your attention. That was what the service was like.
Mm-hmm.
And we just looked at each other and said, this is where we belong. And we joined the church that happened in 2001, of course, and in 2002, February, we joined the church.
Well, I know one thing. I mentioned those 2 blocks, 5 months one year and 6 months another, between pastors that I served. And I was very part-time. My focus was worship and pastoral care, and I didn't do any administration, and I had time. So all of a sudden, I discovered that I enjoyed writing sermons. And before that, it had always been a chore, because you have all these other things you have, and it was the time it took to do it, and when will I do it, and trying to work it into my schedule and all that. But all of a sudden, when I had more time to do it and to think and to work my way into it, all of a sudden that became something I enjoyed. And it was, I don't know whether I want to go back to doing it again. A few more years later, I tend to I have this whole barrel of, we have the barrel of sermons,
Yeah, right.
You pull an old one out and redo it, that sort of thing. But during that time, those blocks of time that I was preaching every week, to the same congregation, it gave me that sense of,
Oh yeah.
I really enjoy this. I probably always did and didn't know it,
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
important to me. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know that if I miss church, if I don't happen to come, and usually we hardly ever miss, do we?
Very seldom.
But I always take something back with me. If that minister, if you're focused on that minister, he's got a good sermon, you can take it back at home with you and think about it. But if he doesn't have a good sermon, I just forget about it then.
But the other thing, and the thing I learned here, and I was fortunate because I had 25 years. The first 5 or 6 years, I really struggled to preach. And I've never had trouble standing up in front of people. But I struggled to preach, and I could look out and I could see. So I was doing some preaching seminars. I was becoming frustrated with myself. I don't know that people in the congregation realized it. Mm-hmm. But what happened to me here, we had a preaching professor in Louisville, Dan Wessler, who wouldn't let us read preaching books. He said, you have to find your own voice. Mm-hmm. And the gift for me here, in terms of my development as a preacher, was the patience of this church in me finding my own voice. Mm-hmm. When I found my own voice, which I had another 20 years here, I looked forward. I loved it. I just loved it. And the other thing, and I began to realize this, like I said, the struggle to find my own voice. I found it and I realized something else. That, it's my voice that people hear, but it's really our voice. Mm-hmm. And it was, I periodically taught preaching at United, and I'd say the same thing. You got to find your own voice, and when you do, then the response from the congregation, it's not just your voice. And when it happens, does it happen all the time? No, but it happens a lot of the time. And when you realize that, you feel it, and you look out. All of it's so quiet, and you step into that pulpit, and the other thing that happens is the expectation is high, and for me that was great. I just loved it. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the Spirit takes over too, because you think you've said something, or you did say it, and somebody will come to you afterwards and say what you said and how that spoke to them, and you didn't say that at all.
Really?
It's
yeah, right.
Oh, okay. But they heard it differently than you said it. It was their voice too.
And it's like they say about a work of art. Once somebody makes a work of art, what other people take from it, that you don't have any control.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Debbie's the one that hired me. Okay. And so that had a positive influence because I wouldn't have been here if she didn't call. And then Bob Wade.
I love Bob Wade. I loved Bob Wade.
Yeah, he was just so personable. Yep. And a funny story about Bob Wade. So Amelia was, I don't know what she was, 2, probably 2, when Bob came, and she, I think, misheard his name. And so when we were talking about Pastor Bob, she always called him Pastor God. And so she would ask if we were going to go see Pastor God. And was God going to be in church today? So God is always in church. But yes, Pastor Bob will be in church too. And that was a good thing for her, because we had to eventually make a little disconnect because when Bob, a little bit before Bob left, my grandfather passed away. And so she had asked, about him and where he was. And I said that he was in heaven and he was with God. And then on Sunday, I said, "Oh, it's time to go to church." And she said, oh, so we're going to go see God. And I was like, well, yeah. And she said, so will Papa be there too? And I was like, okay, hang on. Pastor Bob is, the voice kind of God. We're trying to show God's love. And so we had to kind of disassociate that a little bit. But.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed going to church.
Oh, I do too. I feel like my week don't go well if I don't go to church for some reason.
Yeah.
I guess that's a feeling that you get inside of you.
That's why we come, isn't it?
I guess. I guess.